Wes. Oh my God, I was just gonna ask what day of the week it was, but I first third of what day today is came out as I said hi to you. How you doing, man?
I'm making it, dude. I'm okay. I'm a little bit hazy. Been doing a lot of VR instead of sleep type stuff, but we're good. We're here. Um, yeah, we're here, man. I'm happy to be here.
Cool, man. That is awesome to hear. Yeah, you are a workhorse, man. Like for having all of the personal life stuff going on that you do, plus your professional life, plus the channel, plus you keep on top of absolutely everything, man. Like it has been said more than once over on our Discord that they're just constantly surprised by how much content you put out and how much you keep up with everything. So congratulations. It is not going unrecognized, that's for sure.
Well, it's very nice of you to say that right as we're getting to the time of the year where I stop making content. Like we didn't go on Sunday. We probably won't go on next Sunday. As you know, Brian, we do kind of a bit of a big thing at the end of the year, and that takes a lot of preparation. So pretty much through most of November and December, the only time we really go live is when there are good new releases to talk about, and we quit watching the news so closely. So I'm thank you for the compliment about all the hard work I'm putting in, but we're taking some time off
Hey, it happens.
real soon.
You got to do what you got to do, man. Like you got to keep the content coming, and you got to. I mean, obviously, to make the best content, sometimes you got to scale back and do what you got to do, dude. Oh wow. Okay. Well, let's get the show started because we actually got a lot to talk about, and staring at this hold screen, it's not doing anyone any favors. So,
Let's go.
what? So I just got confused. Everybody was like Miles, and I was like, no, it's Wes, and everybody's like, oh, okay, in the chat. All right, let's start the show. This is PSVR GamesCast Live. We film live every single Monday, WesNesDay, and Friday right here on PSVR with Parole. We talk a lot about PlayStation VR stuff. We talk a lot about PlayStation VR2 stuff. We talk a lot about a lot of other stuff as well, especially when I've got Wes here. We just tend to kind of go off on rants, which I love. Hopefully you do too. If you don't love that, we totally understand. Make sure you don't watch this live because that would be the worst thing ever. Just wait for time for Sci-Fi GameCat Henry, timestamp GameCat Henry, to get the timestamps into the show as he does every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So thank you very much for doing that. Or you can listen to this on your drive to work with sirens on my end. On podcast services of your choice, thanks to Jamie who gets this thing up constantly, and we appreciate him for that. Also, while we're giving shout outs, thanks to the mods, but most importantly right now, thanks to my co-host Wes Dillon, joining us from Virtual Strangers. Wes, what is happening in the world outside of PlayStation VR 2 over in the land of Virtual Strangers?
What is happening? Well, we're preparing for a show tonight. Flexible, we're playing all these games, right? And some of them are out, and some of them are not out. And obviously, we want to talk about the ones that are not out, but we got to have permission to do that. So, we're playing more than we can talk about tonight, and we kind of have an idea what we're going to do. I can tell you we're going to talk about Among Us. We played that yesterday. Super cool. We're going to be talking about that tonight, and we've got other stuff. And I don't want to say specifically yet until we have it set in stone, but should be a good one tonight. I've been playing lots of games and have a lot to say about them.
Nice. I am very curious about Among Us. I was considering picking that up over on the Quest because, as we know, it will be a PSVR 2 title, but it's also a game that I feel like is just going to be one of those that pick up and play, get a group of people together, and I feel like it's going to probably stick around for a good long time, even once we're deep into the generation. Real quick.
One of those. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
no.
It's one of those that's it's as good as your friends, and we have awesome friends, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it cool.
Yeah, I think we all learned that with Werewolves Within. If you're playing with friends, it's a million times better. If you're playing with randos, it's hit or miss. We got Serial Killer, the Stash, and the Flash GameCat right here with the $5 tip in the chest. Don't forget the GameCat's Mowvember team is giving a physical copy of To the Top to 3 lucky donators worldwide can join Mowvember PSVR Challenge. Guys, listen, if you're not aware, we're trying to push the Mowvember support this month. Basically, I just click either of the links in the description below. There's one for the US and there's one for everywhere else. And it's your way to join our GameCat team, to show your support, to donate to men's health awareness and suicide prevention. And that is being led by our good friend, serial killer, the Sash and the Flash GameCat. So join the team and give a little positivity into the world this month. Also, while we're on the topic of tips, because that's how serial killer reminded me to talk about this, I hate missing tips so much, man. Like, missing tips is one of my least favorite things, because what happens is somebody donates to the channel, they're like, they want to hear their name usually read and their comment read, and then we talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about. That's the whole idea behind the tips. For forever we've said, if you want to derail the conversation, you can tip, and we'll read your. Unfortunately, we don't always read the tips, and I always feel super bad that when we don't. So I do want to give a quick shout out to two people that tipped last time. Darwin's Eyeball with the Canadian $2 tip that says, we need an AIM 2.0, which I kind of agree with, Wes, even if it just ends up being some PVC piping that clips the Sense controllers on. Do you think we need an actual controller, or will just an attachment thing like that do?
It's interesting. I've tried gun stocks, and it's not nearly as seamless as the aim controller was. I prefer aim controller over gun stocks that I've tried 10 times out of 10. Now, with that being said, I do think that if we got a gun stock peripheral from Sony, something that's official, something that all of the developers are building their games around, that it might be a little bit better than all of the third-party stuff that I've tried up until now.
Agreed, but I also think there's got to be some kind of concession here that most games are going to be built with two hands in mind, unlike the aim controller, where it was like your hands are always going to be on this two-handed weapon. With the PSVR2 generation, most games are going to be designed with two Sense controllers, and so you'll probably be needing one hand free, right? So there's got to be some kind of clip or something, an easy release way to pull one of your hands off of the weapon so that you can grab a grenade and throw it, or that you can reload, grab a clip off of your chest, whatever it is. And so I'm wondering how feasible that is, because I feel like ripping a controller off of the gun stock is one thing. Clipping it back in and making it seamless, that's another thing. So I don't know about that.
That's always the thing is, getting it off. You're right. Getting it off is one thing, and that's not always a given. Actually, a lot of the time, these magnets are so strong that, just pulling the controller off of it really just kind of breaks your equilibrium. But you're right. As bad as it is to get the thing off, sometimes it's twice as bad trying to find it and get it back on. Now, obviously, as is the case with everything, practice makes perfect. The more you get used to it, it gets seamless for people who have the time to put the reps in. But guys like us, we're playing this game and then we're on to the next one. We don't have time to put 100 hours into a game just to get good at a janky peripheral. So I would prefer. I mean, if I had my choice, I'd prefer AIM 2.0. But again, I feel like if it does end up being a gun stock, it's probably going to be the best one we've ever tried. Yeah.
Oh, very likely. The other tip we missed was from Genetic Blasphemy, and he was actually reminding me to read a tip that I didn't read. So it was, all these things just start piling up. So thank you, Genetic Blasphemy. Thank you, Darwin's Eyeball. Thank you to everybody who tips. Hopefully you guys know that even if we accidentally don't read your tip, we fucking love you and appreciate you. You guys are the ones keeping the lights on around here, even if they seem to only be illuminating one side of my face at any given time, which is strange. I look older on this side because it's more well lit. This is why we keep it dark around here, Wes. People are like, Brian, why do you look so young? I was like, because I live in the dark. That's why. Wes, the question on everybody's mind, it has nothing to do with aim controllers or fucking, even really anything. It's Wednesday. You're here. Everybody's wondering if you've gotten your email yet.
Well, unfortunately, no. I'm still waiting on my email invitation, but I'm coming to terms with it, Brian. I'm starting to get to grips with the fact that maybe I won't get an invite, and that's okay. I mean, it was tough for a few days, but I'm doing really good now. Like, I'm only checking my email like 30 or 40 times a day each, And yeah, we're way better than we were a week ago. I can say that.
Okay. Yeah, the big thing I think people need to remember is that if you didn't get your email, if Sony really does have 2 million units for launch, right? First of all, I think they're going to find out real fast that they need more than that. Second of all, I think only a very small number of those 2 million are being held by Sony Direct. They've got to make sure they don't ruin relationships with their retail partners. They've got Walmart, they've got Target, they've got Best Buy, they've got GameStop, right? And there's so many different locations, and of course the online sites, that they need to make sure that those retailers have those units to sell, and that you can get them pre-ordered there as well. So I think that's why we're seeing such limited numbers. If you saw the poll that I put up over on Twitter, only 20%. I asked, for those of you who signed up to get the email, how many of you got the pre-order email from Sony? And only 20% of the people that we polled got the email. 20%, Wes. That's a really small number. You'd figure it would be closer to half, or 60 or 70%, because we're talking about the hardcore PSVR 1 fan base right now. So, a little surprising. But also it gives me a lot of faith that if you're not getting one from Sony, if you didn't get the email, that there's going to be a multitude of different ways to be able to get one.
You know what I think bothers me? What really bothers me about it? It's not. I don't think it's that I haven't gotten my invite, because I know there are going to be other opportunities. I'm going to have one of these on launch. I think what bothers me about it is I didn't go as soon as it said go register. Yeah. I didn't just go straight and register. And you're reading people online saying I clicked register, I got my email within 5 minutes, and if I had done that, then I would have likely gotten an invite, but I didn't. So I'm kind of disappointed in myself, taking for granted that I'd already done everything that I needed to do when obviously I hadn't.
Primal Sage with the 45 Donkey Kong countries says, apart from Gran Turismo 7, which first-party game is the most likely at launch in your opinion? New IP from Studio X would also be a valid answer. Love you guys. Man, that's too bad he took Gran Turismo 7 off the table, because I feel like that's a no-brainer.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm getting the gist of the question correct.
Yep.
So we're in this world, we're getting another first-party launch title. What do we think it is? And it can't be GT7.
Yeah.
Right? Is that?
I hope you read that correctly, because I was copying and pasting something else while you were talking.
Okay. Yeah. I think I've got the gist of the question here. Most people would say Astrobot. I don't think Astrobot's going to be a launch title. I think there's one coming. I don't think it's going to be a VR only title. I think it's going to be a hybrid.
7. What are the first party games do you think we could potentially see from Sony themselves on PSVR 2?
I like the Wipeout idea. I think we've heard rumors that one's in development. We can only assume that it's going to be a VR supported title, probably a hybrid, just like we spoke about with Astrobot. Hopefully they heard that part of it. I also keep hearing these rumors about Firesprite possibly working on like a Twisted Metal game that would sell some headsets for sure. So I don't know, man. What do you think?
It's really, really tough to say. Ignoring things like the potential of, a PSVR 2 version of blank, right? Because we could say the persistence would be like, well, that's logical, right? First party owned studio, whatever. It's like now you have two hands in that game. Great. I think the big question is like, what new games would we see? And dude, I can't shake the thought of The Last of Us, right? The Last of Us to me is one of those games that is so much about stealth and so much about just about kind of patience in listening and, using your visual cues and your audio cues. And I think all of those be amplified so much in VR to the point where playing The Last of Us Part 1 again for the first time in VR would very much feel like the first time playing that game. And so where I was in the camp of, I don't need another remaster. No offense to people who wanted it or enjoyed it or loved the upgrades. It's just I had already played it twice. The only way I'm going to play this game a third time is in VR. And that would really, to me, finally say, this is the reason we just charged you $70 for this game that you already own twice, Brian. this makes the most sense to me. This isn't the kind of game. You're not swinging on vines. You're not using jetpacks. You're not doing crazy things. You are a human being in a very human world, fighting inhuman monsters. But like, you're not doing crazy things. You're not even like driving cars in that game or anything like that. You are like pretty much on your feet or swimming the entire time.
I love the world. I just love being in that world. Post-apocalyptic scenarios are some of my favorite in games, and it's just the aesthetic of it, the rundown buildings, the overgrown architecture, the giraffes that you sometimes run into. It's awesome. I would love to be in that world.
I'm happy you mentioned the giraffes. That sense of scale alone cannot be conveyed on a flat screen the way it can in VR. And it was a beautiful sight in the flat screen game, but seeing that them towering over you, I can't even think of anything that would compare to that. It'd be amazing. Sick Ranch says, I found The Last of Us too linear. Another great reason it would be a great VR game. We have also got Hasib Mirza in the chat with the $5 tip, basically throwing shade at me, saying that's easy to say when you have an email, Brian. I feel your pain, Wes. Solidarity. That is easy to say when I have an email, Hasib, and I do apologize if I'm minimizing your pain. That is not my intention. I love you very much. Old Darth, a catnipping game cat with a Canadian $2 tip, says PSVR2 can be played with a cable/console behind us. These are revelations. You no longer have to face anything, do you? It's good stuff.
Yeah, I see people actually coming around on the cable now, man. Like, not a lot, but people. It's weird, man, because before a lot of these guys were like, I would never buy it. Now, the thing's been announced. Everybody got their little bitch session out about the $550 price tag, and now I'm starting to people say, you know what? I think I'm going to buy it. I think I'm going to get it, and some of them are like, man, I haven't played tethered VR in 3 years, so it's going to be an interesting experiment to see how it goes over when it does get here.
Yeah, well, for all those people who either don't like the idea of tethered VR or haven't played one in a while, I mean, I definitely recommend getting a pulley system. I think the company is Kiwi Design or VR Kiwi. One of those makes Cave Digger. The other one makes pulleys. I can't remember which is which. But the pulley system, you just screw a couple things into your ceiling. It literally takes 5 minutes, and you will now have a cable-free existence. It is up and out of the way. You will never once hit that cable on accident. And it is definitely something I'm going to be doing this Gen West, because too often last gen, I'm playing Beat Saber, and then I accidentally throw one of my sabers up and I get caught in the cable and it throws my rhythm off, and I'm like, get that out of the way, So, I'm with everybody. The cable can be a hindrance sometimes, but there's actually very easy ways to get it out of the way, and I highly recommend doing that.
I never had much of a problem with it at all. But, admittedly, I play a lot of seated VR. I don't stand up a lot, so.
I stand up a lot. I'm no longer the gamer I once was. Zombie's got a great suggestion in the chat. He says he just incorporated it into his sex swing. Problem solved. I mean, if you're not using it for anything else, Zombie, totally understand. Piotrek F with the 12 plantain says, Gaming Bolt in video today said PSVR2 is Vita again. Well, we know other sites we're not reading. Gaming Bolt will add it to the list.
Did you know, Brian, that the release date is the exact same release date as the Vita?
Did you know? Yeah, I did actually know that. I heard somebody mention that the other day, and good. It'll be nice to remove that curse, right? Be like, hey, this is something that didn't go as well.
On my end. Sorry.
Is it dogs that we said?
Yeah. My dog is making noise.
No. Okay. Do we need to bring it on camera? Do we need to get it involved in the show? I don't want your dog to feel neglected.
Probably not. See, here's the thing. If I open the door and let him in, he's going to walk over there for about 5 seconds, and then he's going to walk back to the door and start barking again. Because that's what he does. He doesn't want to come in. He just wants the door to be open.
Yeah.
So
understandable. Yeah. They just want to be acknowledged, Wes. That's all. Hey,
there's plenty of people in there.
Did you see that we got an announcement of a new PSVR 1 game that's actually coming out next week, Wes? Did you see this today?
I did, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to see one of my favorite people being involved in this project is pretty cool.
Yeah. This game is called Dropship Commander, and you know what? Here's the trailer, but you guys, I think, have already seen the trailer if you've watched my breaking news report. So we're, in a second here, we're going to switch over to full screen, and then we're going to watch some exclusive gameplay that has yet to be revealed. Did you finish your thought? I'm sorry. Did you say who it was?
No, I mean, I think, are you going to show the trailer or are you showing something else?
I'm showing the trailer just while we're talking here. We can switch over to gameplay in a second.
Yeah, no, Creeper Betty, subsequently one of the people who I've been playing a lot of VR with lately, or at least some. We played, she was one of the Among Us people last night, by the way. I love Betty. She's a beautiful person, and I think that I'm going to be smiling quite a bit playing this game, because it's Betty talking to me.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, if you don't know Creeper Betty, she's been a part of the GameCat community for an extremely long time, part of the overall VR community, just as long or longer. And she actually works at Kluge Interactive with the Synth Riders team now. That was a fairly recent development, I think, over the past like 2 or 3 months. So she's gonna be doing the voiceovers for this, and she's prominently featured in this trailer, which, you know what? I say let's just fucking play the whole gameplay thing I got. It's not super long, but you do get to hear her voice in it, which is really nice. And I swear it's here somewhere. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. This is it. Let me just find it. There we go. Or one of these days I'll get organized, Wes, and
we'll get you a new hard drive for Christmas. I think that's what you need.
Yeah, you think that's it?
Yeah.
Interesting. I hope everyone's having a nice day out there. I'm just taking my time. Usually I try to be as quick and professional about this as possible, but we are just crashed for 10 minutes. So I mean, like, you know.
Did we get the Primal Sage?
Here we go.
Yep, we could do that right now.
Hold on. We'll get his tip right after this. I got it up and running.
Sure. Okay.
Astronaut rescued. Great job. Try not to do that again. Well, at least the pieces are getting bigger. You might just have a career here yet.
There we go. So Dropship Commander comes out next week. Creeper Betty, I talked to Reggie, actually, the developer of the game over at Strange Games. I talked to him this morning, and he said he was very careful to make sure that Creeper Betty would not be that annoying voice in your ear constantly, being like, where did you learn to drive? Where did you learn to drive? Where did you learn to drive? So it sounds like she'll be, just there to congratulate you or to kick you a little bit when you're down. But very cool to hear her voice. He had teased it a little bit to me, Wes, and said somebody that I would be familiar with. And immediately when I thought of Miles, I was like, did you get Miles to do voiceovers in your game? And so when I saw Creeper Betty's name on the letters on the screen, I was overwhelmed, man. I thought that was fantastic.
I agree. I want to shout out Reggie, a true friend to the PSVR community to the end, man. How about this guy still doing PSVR 1 games?
Yeah, and especially since there have been plenty of developers who went to make PSVR 1 games, and Sony says, "Don't bother. Like, just make it for PSVR 2." Literally saying, "It's time to abandon ship, everybody. Let's move on." right? And the fact that Reggie's still out there and he's like, yeah, we're doing this for PSVR1, and it will be cross-buy for PS5, assumingly PSVR2. So one of the many games that'll have that free upgrade, and going for only $8. I do love these kind of smaller experiences. I'm sure if you play it from start to finish, it won't feel terribly small. But the smaller arcade type games, it's kind of nice to have these. I was a big fan of Starbear Taxi back when that came out. Simple but fun, and actually a fairly similar gameplay loop, landing and doing the thing.
Yeah, it's just another example of like age-old classic gameplay concepts being modernized for VR. And obviously, I don't want to. I have a hard time coming up with words to say what I want to say without trying to diminish what the game is. It's a simple concept. I think that what it's going to get from VR is going to be mostly visual. I think that the environments are. You see something like this and people go, "Why VR? Why do I need to play a game like this in VR?"
Yep.
I think the environments and the sound are going to be what makes it worthwhile. And for just $8, I mean, come on, bro.
Yeah. People in the chat are talking about Solar Jetman, which makes me kind of curious. If you guys don't know, you can join our Discord with the link in the description, and you can leave your viewer takeover questions there. Like I said, you can always tip during the show or ask questions during the show, and we'll do our best to incorporate everybody as much as possible. But the best way to get your questions on the show is for us to know what they are ahead of time. Leave them over in the viewer takeover channel, just like Or Seek the Gamecat did, or Seek the Dreaming Gamecat. I misspoke. Says hashtag viewer takeover. We now have a handful of old arcade games ported to VR. What other classic arcade games would you play in VR? Wes.
Polybius? No, wait a minute. I already have that one. I don't know, man. Like I'm a special case when it comes to VR because I'll literally play anything. Like if it's in VR, I love VR, and I'm one of these people. A lot of people these days will tell you that it's not enough to put a game in VR. I'm not one of these people. Put any game in VR and I'm going to play it. So yeah, I don't know, man. Shit, I'll play Frogger in VR. Anything.
That works. I don't know if anybody remembers this. I think we've talked about it before on the show, but one of my favorite games from back in this era, I think kind of like the Lunar Landa era, would be Montezuma's Revenge. And I'm not even sitting here to try to figure out how it would work in VR, right? Because it was a side-scrolling platformer type thing. Collect keys, open doors, avoid enemies, whatever. Very, very simple, one screen at a time, no scrolling type adventure. I love that thing on like Master System, and the NES just got a version last year for some reason. I don't know if I would just want to play that from the side view perspective, or if I actually want to get in there and like play the exact game and just play it in first person. I have no idea, but that's my answer to Orsik's question. Montezuma's Revenge, very good stuff. Same way as Spelunky or Spelunker back in the day. I love to play that in VR too. A couple tips in the chat. We will finally now get to Primal Sage's Donkey Kong Country 17 Donkey Kong Country tip. He says the Reset Era poll says 7% will not buy PSVR2 due to cable. Wes, I feel like 7% is actually a really low number.
Yeah, that seems a little lower than I was expecting, honestly. But that's cool, man. I guess a lot of people in that community excited for PSVR2.
Yeah. 7. I mean, I feel like when it was first announced 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, this number would have been much, much higher. But here we are. We're getting closer to launch. We're finding out that almost nothing compares to what it's going to offer. And so you say at this point you have to say, is it worth the price? Can I deal with the cable, or do I really want to wait for? Do I want to upgrade my PC or wait for Oculus to bring out something that's comparable? And I think for a lot of people, this is the easy way to get into VR, especially high-end VR for as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
Josh Cat with the $5 tip says, much love to Reggie Strange. He always delivers fun games at a reasonable price. Bonus is getting to hear Creeper Betty. Support indie VR studios. Agreed, Josh.
You're here.
And I will let you know if it sucks when I do my review.
Good call,
next week.
Shapeshifter. Shapeshifter the Amorphous Game Cat says the Legend of Zelda NES looks brilliant in VR. Did you see the Doom mod last week with the original Legend of Zelda?
I did. I saw John Riggs playing it. I don't know if he was the only video out there, but he was the one that I watched. I love John Riggs. If you like retro stuff and you also like VR stuff, John Riggs is kind of the perfect dude because he's into retro and VR. And so when The Legend of Zelda, the Doom mod came out to VR, he was the perfect person to watch play that, and it looked great, man. I thought it looked like a lot of fun.
He was the first person I messaged as soon as I saw it. I live in messages, and it was just like the whole message was, dude. Yeah, it was super exciting. He played all the way through it, dude, and that's a lot of game, especially if you're in first person perspective and you can't exactly judge which bush you have to burn or which rock you have to push. You have to try to remember this and work it all out in first person. I got to imagine that he played that game a lot this week to get through the whole thing. Like, think about the last labyrinth, level 9, how huge that thing is. Now try to think about trying to navigate that from first person.
Yeah,
man.
I didn't, as someone who didn't have an NES when everyone else had an NES, right? All my friends had one. And my parents were like, we have a Commodore 64 and that's what you're going to play. Fucking deal. I was like, okay. So I only got to play Legend of Zelda at my friend's house. I didn't actually get to play it for myself and I actually try to complete it for myself. I don't think I had my own NES till I was like 16, something like that. Back when you could get everything dirt cheap, get the system for like $20. My local comic book store, which is also a video game store. Any NES game you could think of was on that wall for $3. I mean, the number of times Little Samson probably went through that place for $3 or Panic Restaurant for $3. But man, I just coming home with stacks of games, right? And so that's when I got into Zelda and actually got to play it for myself for the first time, and not just like my friend going, "Here, you want to try?" And I go, "Okay." Die.
I'd say more than any other game, that original Legend of Zelda game was probably the one single spark to my love of video games that persists to this day. I got my NES when I think it was for my 7th birthday. And man, I mean, obviously I had an Atari before that and I was playing Pac-Man and all that stuff. Mario, obviously a big change when we got side-scrolling platformers, but it was Zelda with the exploration and the secrets and the magic. That's what really hooked me and said, man, I love this. All I want to ever do is play games for the rest of my life now. And I'm still doing it.
Yeah. I mean, Zelda was essentially our first open world game. Probably not when you look at like PC games like Ultima or whatever. I'm sure there's something that predates it. But for, as far as mainstream gamers are concerned, Sirens on my end, open world, and just it kind of pushes you out there and says, fucking go to it. And I love that, man. Still to this day, the first time I walked out of the vault in Fallout 3, and I was just like, which way do I go? And the game's like, does whatever. And I'm like, oh, that way.
Yeah, you used to have to buy map books and stuff to play these games because obviously there was no internet at the time. There was Nintendo Power magazines and things like this. But a big open world like that with so many secrets, and some of the labyrinths that you have to be are hidden. And I mean, just manually searching a map like that, trying to find this stuff, it takes forever. And I guess as children, we had that kind of time and patience, right? We'd go burning. You know what was the worst is burning these bushes with the blue candle. And like, you can only use it once per screen. So you'd have to scroll off the screen, come back, burn one more bush, off the screen, come back, one more bush. And we did it.
We did it. Yep. We were patient, man. Like, again, as kids, we had like one game for 6 months, right? You certainly weren't just getting to buy like a new game every single week. And so having to go off screen and do that and spend hours and hours and hours, sometimes not making any progress whatsoever. That was just part of it back then. The chat is very interesting. Nihilist Ryan reminds me that Adventure on Atari was more likely our first open world console game. Yeah, good point. Mancunian's asking if I still have the red tie. It's around here somewhere, man. It's around here somewhere. But until other people actually show up in my apartment to film face to face with me, probably not going to see the tie. I'm not getting dressed up for anybody. You guys have already seen. This is what I look like. Can't get dressed up anymore. The illusion is shattered, Wes. So, listen, we've seen from a lot of developers, and it seems like it's more every day that are sort of coming out of the closet and saying, "Hey, we know you're buying a PSVR 2. We know you own our game on PSVR 1. We're going to give you a free upgrade with some enhancements, right? 4K visuals or adaptive triggers. They're going to update it with Rumble in the headset, whatever it is." Today was the first time we saw somebody officially buck the trend and say, "Hey, our game's on PSVR 1, but we're not giving you a free upgrade. Here's what we've got in store for you." And that was the team over at Truant Pixel, the very, very small team at Truant Pixel, with their game 2MD VR Football. Can you explain the situation here, Wes, for us while I bring up a new trailer finally?
Yeah, so 2MD VR Football is a very interesting title because it's a title that's on every major VR platform, but none of the versions of this game are ports. Each platform has its own individual kind of version of the game, and the PSVR version, one of the older versions of the game, and the game has gone on since then to get more updates and more features, a lot more, to be quite honest. It's a much more rich and fulfilling game now for football fans out there. So I think we're going to get that version of the game now on PSVR 2, but with new features even still. So it's going to be yet another version of the game that will at that time be the most feature-rich version. And no, while it won't be a free upgrade, they're going to do something that we've been calling for a long time on the Oculus store. It's not just a question of making it free or making people pay full price. There's an in-between. There's a middle ground. You can give discounts, and that's what they're going to do here. They're going to make it very inexpensive for those who bought the original game to get the PSVR 2 version.
Yeah, I mean, on my breaking news report today, M was making it sound like this isn't going to be a $10 or $15 upgrade. This is going to be, he referred to it as a cup of coffee, not even a special cup of coffee, just a cup of coffee. So it sounds like it's going to be like $4 or something like that, you know? And this will be for the sequel, saying that it's not really possible for them to upgrade the PSVR 1 version to PSVR 2, so they're just going to give us this full featured sequel, which as you can see, if anybody out there hasn't played this game since PSVR 1, this is not how the PSVR 1 game looked. The PSVR 1 game looked like a bunch of toy figures all out on the field with you that didn't animate, right? They just moved around and like kind of knocked each other over, and it had a cute aesthetic, right? But it certainly wasn't this. These are actual players that have actual animations, tackling animations, falling over properly, to the point where I'm actually thinking this looks far better than the NFL Pro era game that we just got, especially knowing full well that these guys know how throwing mechanics are supposed to feel in a VR game. I couldn't throw the ball in Pro era if my life depended on it. It was like 1 out of every 3 passes I tried to make would just fall straight to the ground. So I have a lot of, I'm assuming, it could be moves, it could be me, but the fact is I never had that problem in 2MD VR Football. The passing always felt spot on. So I trust these guys when it comes to making a new football game, and knowing full well that they could take this huge loss. They're taking this huge loss because they don't have to, right? They're not bringing the original game over. They're bringing the sequel over, and they could absolutely charge full price for the sequel. They did absolutely not have to do this. And for them to do this as like kind of an in-between measure, as you just pointed out, is, I think, really,
it's interesting.
Just a fucking nice move.
Because think about who their market is. Obviously, we're going to get NFL games now. Mm-hmm. So who are they going to sell this game to? I mean, it's a fun football game, and in many ways superior to the gameplay in the NFL Pro era game. But at the end of the day, people are going to buy that other game just so that they can play as their team. So it's interesting that they're coming back to this. They're even doing like a full engine upgrade on it from the original version. I'm sure it's going to be a great game. But I find it interesting. I hope that this is just their resume going forward. Hopefully they get the next contract to make the next NFL game. It'll make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. What there aren't too many other games in this situation that I would be happy to hear this type of news from. And what I mean by that is, if Blood and Truth 2 came out, I wouldn't want Sony London being like, hey, if you bought the first one, well, sorry, we're not porting that one over. We're not giving you a PSVR 1 upgrade to that, but we'll give you $10 off of Blood and Truth 2 if you bought Blood and Truth. I'm like, no, bring us, I want the port of the first game, right? And so there's not too many examples where this makes sense to me, but one of them where it does make sense, Wes, and I don't know if I'm just topic jumping too quickly here, but I feel like Everybody's Golf needs this treatment because Everybody's Golf VR was a great first step into VR, but it didn't have multiplayer, it didn't have enough courses, the caddies were terrible, right? It just needed an option to turn those off, and let's just go back to the first thing I said, multiplayer, right? I play Walkabout Mini Golf so much, not because it's the greatest golf game ever made, but because I get to hang out with my friends and putt-putt's pretty cool, I guess. So I would love if we got an Everybody's Golf VR 2 and Sony said, for anybody who bought the first game, you get, 30% off of Everybody's Golf 2. Don't worry, you're not missing out. It has all the features and all of the caddies and all the courses and everything from the first game, but we blew it up and now it includes all this extra stuff too. So you're not losing anything. But we wanted to bring you a new game that took full advantage of PSVR 2. It's one of the very few other games I would like to see this happen for.
Well, that would be great. Obviously, with it being a first-party title, you'd like to see something like that. That was a full-price game, wasn't it, when it launched?
Everybody's Golf?
Yeah.
I want to say $30.
That was. Oh, okay. Well, maybe it was. I was thinking it costed more than that. So yeah, that would be cool. I guess I wouldn't expect it. To be quite honest, it would have made a lot more sense if it were like a $50 game, like I was thinking. But $30 game, they're probably not going to put that kind of time into it. Now they might do the sequel. Actually, it's probably pretty likely that they will do a sequel at some point. And hopefully it does have all these features that you'd like to see in it. But I think they'll make people pay for it for sure, especially today's Sony, which obviously making us pay for every little fucking thing. Right.
Yeah. And honestly, if I get Everybody's Golf VR 2, which is, that's all I really want, even if they charge me more for it, if they charge me $50 and it has all the features I'm looking for, that's totally fine. It's totally fine. I just want it. Right. And this is sort of the mantra of PSVR 2 in general, Wes, right? Is like, we want AAA games. Yes, we all have to pay for them. We want an amazing headset. Yes, it turns out we're going to have to pay for that. This is the PSVR 2 generation. Shit's getting more expensive. We're getting better quality things, and it's going to cost more money. And that means we're all going to be a lot more broke. Yeah.
Maybe, Brian, maybe they do it. Maybe they call it a free PSVR 2 upgrade, and they'll call it Everybody's Golf 2, but instead of like the number 2, it'll be like TOO. Like Everybody's Golf. This is Everybody's Golf 2.
I actually really like that, and because TOO implies other people more, and so it makes sense for the multiplayer. This is perfect, Wes. Why don't you join Clap Hands marketing team and get on that like now?
I'm sending my resume in tomorrow.
Super cool video, bro, with the $2 says upgrades, sure, but I don't see sequels discounted. Well, but this is the one we're talking about right now. The game that's playing right below us is a sequel. And it's not, I guess technically a sequel. It was sold as a separate game. I don't know. Regardless, very, very cool. More developers kind of talking about their PSVR 2 plans, and that just means the more PSVR 2 games that there are, and the more games that are making their way over from PSVR 1, the better, right? Just to kind of, again, use the word that we keep using over on Discord, bolster the PSVR 2 library to the point where it's very, very hard to complain about the lineup.
And we've got about 70 confirmed titles now, don't we? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, and just recently we found out that No Man's Sky would be getting a free upgrade. Not that we didn't expect it. Right, I don't think you or I or anyone out there was like, oh yeah, they're going to charge for that PSVR 2 patch on No Man's Sky, considering that they've been delivering upgrades and patches and everything since launch for free. They've never charged for a single one of them, but again, just really, really good to hear.
Last year when we did our year-end award show, we changed the title of our best ongoing support for a VR game. The title of that award is the Hello Games Award, because has there ever been another studio that has supported a game better?
All right, and we crashed again, but West was mid-sentence, so let's try to figure out where we left off.
Are we back or are we crashed again?
No, we're back. We're back.
I thought you were telling me that we crashed again. I was like, what? No, really? Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back. So what we were talking? We were talking about No Man's Sky free upgrade. No, I was just sharing an anecdote about Hello Games and our year-end awards show last year. We changed the title of our award for the best ongoing support of a game to the Hello Games Award, because in our opinion, there has never been another studio that has supported a game better post-launch than Hello Games has with No Man's Sky. It's amazing that they're still doing anything with this game all these years later.
Yeah, and especially because there was definitely some negative backlash at launch. I could have easily seen...
It was a meme. This game was a meme when it launched, dude. It was so terrible.
Yeah, I could have easily seen. I mean, because Sony backed this project early on, and Hello Games was really small prior to No Man's Sky. They were making Joe Danger games, which I mean, really, really adorable small motorcycle trick games. It wasn't anything crazy. So I could totally see how this could have gone horribly wrong for them, and it kind of seemed like it was going to go horribly wrong for that first year. But it has been one of the best success stories ever in video game history. So
it was kind of crazy that they got all this criticism for being too ambitious and for describing a game that they could never make, which was true at the time. The game they were describing really wasn't possible, but the game they were describing is the game that we have today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, pretty incredible persistence from that team.
So the announcement that we got from Hello Games, and you can see it for yourself. You know what? I was going to say you can see it for yourself if you turn on your PlayStation, but oh, Jesus, you can see it really big if you look at your screen right now. Let me try to size that down to make it readable. There it is. No Man's Sky, incoming free PSVR2 update the power of the PlayStation 5, coupled with the all-new PlayStation VR2 hardware, including the new Sense controllers, combined together to take the sense of immersion and believability up another level. Free to existing users, coming February 2022. Makes it sound like, to me, launch day, launch window. It's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. And just, again, bolsters that launch lineup. A lot of PSVR 1 titles making their way over for launch. A lot of Quest and PC VR ports making their way over to launch. And, of course, some original titles as well. Games that we've never seen before.
It'll be nice to have something to do when we take a break, right? Like, we're going to play Village for like 6 solid hours. And we're like, do we really want to play through the whole thing in one sitting? We should probably stop for a minute, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to stop playing VR. Well, let's just hop over to No Man's Sky for a little while and see how that is.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Free. It's free.
It's free. And the fact that it worked and looked so good on PSVR 1 as it was, I'm very curious to see what the improvement is like. Right, because I mean, I'm sure the interactions are going to be fairly similar, but you know, there's plenty of things like there's a whole world where there's sandworms like tremors, right? And I can only imagine that that's going to activate the vibration in the headset and just kind of add to the feeling that like the ground you're standing on isn't even stable. That kind of stuff to me is what I'm looking forward to. Not to mention the super crisp 4K visuals. It's gonna be pretty damn cool.
I think the haptics are going to be a big deal in this headset, man. Just the way they work together and the kind of tactile feel that everything's going to have now. Haptics are very, very effective in VR.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that helps with immersion. That's why as cool as I thought the adaptive triggers were on the DualSense, I'm still like, I can see my hands and I can see them holding a controller and I can see that, you know, my character on the screen, I can feel what they're doing. But when it's actually when it's a gun that I'm looking out and seeing in my own hand, and then the trigger jams or something like that, and that's going to be a completely different experience. That's why that's what the technology in the DualSense is really for. I think for VR, it's more of a prototype for PSVR 2 than it was for anything else. Mancunian Gamecast says, I can't wait for Brian's full live stream of the Resident Evil Village. Yeah, man, me neither. I everyone has said that Village isn't nearly as scary as 7, but I do feel like with the
It's a different game than 7. It's a different vibe. There's plenty of scary in it, especially like the first chapter is just fucking terrifying. It's intense. So don't let me short sell it. When I say that there's some weirdness in the game, that's later, man. There's plenty of scary stuff in this game.
That's really good to hear. Because yeah, it wasn't just you; it's everybody. Everybody was like, "Oh, it's definitely not scary, especially compared to 7." But again, that's people were playing it on the flat screen; they weren't playing it in VR, and they were comparing it to 7, which is like one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in my life.
It's a different feel. It's a different kind of scare than 7 for sure. But it's still very scary.
Nice. I love being scared more than anything else in the world, and I've grown to love sharing my embarrassing screams and cold sweats with the rest of you guys. So, yeah, I got to make sure that gets captured in some way or another, or stream it live. It'll be fun.
For those of you who are interested, I think GameStop is doing a pre-Black Friday sale maybe this week, and peripherals such as the HD camera and the Pulse 3D headset. This stuff up to a third off, I think. So if you were going to buy this stuff anyway, might be the time to pick it up.
Definitely. Yeah, so I'm just reading through the chat. All right. So speaking of Resident Evil Village, Wes, it seems to me, and this is what I kind of tossed at you as a suggestion for today's topic. It seems to me there's a lot of confusion out there about the PSVR2 launch lineup, and this doesn't just come from the comments on my YouTube channel or your YouTube channel. It seems like it's coming from all directions. To the fact that now, and please don't everybody take this with a grain of salt, because I haven't had a chance to watch anybody's PSVR2 coverage yet. But I do know that there are some bigger, more reputable websites out there that are talking about the PSVR2 launch as if they know what the launch lineup is, and then they're rating it and saying this thing isn't, the headset is worth the money, but then the launch lineup maybe isn't. We don't know what the launch lineup is yet. That's you can boil this entire episode down to these words right here. Sony hasn't revealed everything yet. We don't know the full launch lineup yet. There are more games to be revealed before launch. I don't know if they're going to do a showcase or a state of play or something before pre-orders go live. But more is being revealed before launch. That is one thing I can absolutely tell you 100%. So since we don't know what that is, we can only sort of speculate right now. Some of the very, very few of these games actually say, hey, we're going to be there for launch. Very few of them. But we've got a whole list of games that have been announced by Sony themselves, right? We could do a whole separate episode about games that have been announced by the developers themselves and not Sony, right? I mean, Hubris is not on this list, Wes, but that game is definitely coming to PSVR 2 next year. So it's very important that we make that distinction right now, because we don't want anybody going, well, why aren't you talking about this game or this game or this game? We're only talking about games that have been revealed by Sony, because we're trying to sort of narrow down what the launch lineup is.
Right.
Oh man, we got tips.
It's interesting because there does seem to be a lot of confusion about this, not only from viewers, but I mean, I'm watching other content creators, some of which are very sizable, and they're sitting and saying things that are just not true, and it's not because they're typically malicious or typically ill-informed. People are just confused. I'm confused. Like if you ask me to list off all of the different launch titles that have been confirmed, I probably couldn't do that.
No.
No.
I mean, right now, like I couldn't tell you. Have they confirmed? This is just me not like maybe doing my due diligence. I'm sure somewhere I could find the answer to this question. Is Resident Evil Village 100% confirmed to be a launch title? We totally assume it would be, and common sense would dictate, hey, this game's been out forever and they want to make a splash on day one. Yes, of course it is. But have they said that?
And now that you're asking me, I don't know. I've always kind of taken it for granted that it is. And to be honest, we might have read at some point on the blog or whatever that it is.
Right.
I don't know. Now you have me second guessing myself.
And that's the problem, Wes. This is the problem with the way Sony has done things so far, right? They've given us a lot of information. They've shown up a lot of games. They've revealed the launch price tag and the launch date and some pre-order details, but there's so much stuff missing from not only what they've said, but also in the way that they've done it. It's been so scattered. The information has been coming out since January or February of last year. And then it's up to people like us, Wes, to put all that fucking information together into one comprehensive video so that people can go, wait, what games are going to be there at launch? Wait, how much is this thing going to be? Wait, I mean, so what they need to do is kind of do it themselves and do a state of play and reveal the launch lineup and make everything crystal clear, right? Just because it shouldn't be on us. I'm super happy that I get to do it, right? And that I have a job now because Sony's not doing theirs. But 2 years of information, man. Like every couple months, I have to kind of put it all together into an everything we know about PSVR2 video, right? Because they're not doing it. And so when people are confused, I understand why. It makes perfect sense why people are confused.
And we get confused because, I mean, we're constantly trying to do the math, right? Put 2 and 2 together to come up with 4. And there's a lot of things that, you know, we can discern from the clues that they've dropped, the breadcrumbs, right? But over time, we just kind of, that stuff just goes into our head as confirmed. Like, for example, Resident Evil Village, we assume that that's going to be a launch title.
Right.
Because why? Well, because Resident Evil 4 is coming. There's going to be some kind of VR support for that. We don't think they're going to launch them together. So one's probably should be ready at launch and the other one come probably in the summertime, right? At least a little bit of a gap like that. So which one would be the one we would get first? Obviously, it would be Village. 2 + 2 = 4, right?
Yeah, I mean, there'd have to be. There'd have to be a gap. And we haven't seen anything from... You were talking about 4 and Village, right? Those are the two?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we haven't seen anything of 4. They haven't talked about 4 since that initial state of play where we got that little messaging, and we haven't seen anything since. So, yeah, Village, obviously.
Right.
Right. And so the only thing we can kind of really do at this point, I think, is to go over to the PlayStation Store for confirmation on some of these. And luckily, I don't know if you guys have seen this. Actually, let me just bring this up, and I can do this in front of you guys instead of doing it behind the scenes and then bringing it up. There we go. And we can come over here, and now we're all on the PlayStation Store together. How nice is this? One big happy family. And then we're going to scroll to the bottom. Whoop, we don't have to scroll to the bottom. It's actually right there, front and center, PlayStation VR2, which is really nice because you don't often see that. But we're going to go to... I'm going to shop. I'm going to go digital games. And then we're going to scroll all the way down to... Is it just me? Where the hell did PSVR2 go?
I don't know. I'm a step behind here.
You are a step behind. It's not on the screen, Wes. It was just the last time I did this. It was totally on the screen. What about? Oh, it's just off screen. It's just not all coming together. Damn it. I don't know why this.
You're going to the PC version of the PlayStation Store, right?
PC version of the PlayStation Store. That's so weird. It's actually not coming up on this. I thought it was just off the side of the screen, but it's literally just not on this version. Well, that sucks. I thought here I thought we were doing something good, but no. Okay, so I guess that's off the table. Back to it. Okay, so Wes, let's try to narrow down what we think the launch lineup is. You think that's a good first step?
Sure. Yeah. I think it would be a healthy exercise for certain.
All right, because I do have the PlayStation Store up here, in a completely separate window from not from what everybody can see. But okay, let's go with Village. Do we think Village is going to be a launch title?
Absolutely think Village is going to be a launch title. It's one of the very first games that they revealed. It was one of the games. I mean, we've been hearing about this game being in development for VR for a long time, like even so much so that there for a while we thought this game was going to launch on PS4, PSVR1. So yeah, absolutely think this will be ready for launch.
Okay, and while you were talking about that, I was able to bring this shit up. Here's the funny thing, Wes. Resident Evil Village, not listed in the PlayStation VR2 section of the store. So even if we went over there, and of course we understand why, I think, is because it's not a PSVR2 title that's going to get a PSVR2 patch, an upgrade. If we believe everything that Sony's saying. I don't know, Subtravia, why I didn't click the PSVR2 tile. I don't know. Don't ask questions I don't have answers to. But no, actually we got it up now, so that's all good. But again, I do believe that this will be a free upgrade for anyone who owns Village, and it'll be there at launch. And I think the obvious other one, the other 100% PSVR2 title is obviously Call of the Mountain. There's a bundle, there's a pack-in. They've said it a few times. This will be a launch title, and so we're kicking off the PSVR2 launch, Wes, with what I mean, potentially 2 AAA titles.
Right. Yeah. And typically that's enough, right? With a nice, a nice collection of third-party and independent titles built around a good 2 or 3 big AAA titles. That's typically enough, at least for 3 or 4 months, and then they can give us our next, our next one to move on to. But Horizon is a big one, man. This is kind of an unprecedented step for Sony, putting one of their big first-party IPs into a game that's exclusively a VR game. And not only that, this game in many ways is a demonstration of all the new technology and what is going to be the first real next-gen consumer VR headset. This is a huge title, and I think people aren't really quite understanding, or maybe where they revealed it so long ago, people are kind of underestimating how profoundly awesome the experience of the Horizon game is going to be.
Do you think there's also an element of people overreacting to some of the first impressions that we've heard out there? We know people like Ian Higton from Eurogamer and BMF and a bunch of other people out there who get to go hands on, right? I'm like actually messing up my YouTubers now. I can't remember who did and who didn't play it, but we saw that day where a bunch of people went hands on with PSVR2, and we get their firsthand impressions and overwhelmingly positive. But the one thing that we all kind of took from Horizon Call of the Mountain that day was that combat takes place in this circle, right? So you suddenly become kind of locked into this circular arena where you're just kind of strafing left, strafing right, or dodging left, dodging right. And I think immediately people took that to mean this isn't a full-fledged Horizon game. This is more of an experience. And I think we're all reading into that just a little bit too much, don't you?
Yeah, well, when people think of Horizon, they think of a very specific gameplay style. Yeah. But I mean, moving this over into first-person VR is going to change the gameplay loop dramatically. This isn't going to feel like you're playing a Horizon game that you've played before. It's the world will feel very familiar. The characters obviously are going to be very familiar. But what you're doing as you're playing is going to be radically different than any other Horizon game before. So I think that there's probably a little bit going on there. I think a lot of, the two that you named, VR Oasis and Eurogamer, those were really the only two VR
Oasis. Yeah, that's who it was.
Right. Yeah. Those were really the only two people who got to demo it that were actually VR content creators. The rest of them were all flat game outlets. Yeah. So they're more likely to be critical of something like that, I feel like, right, than the VR people.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. It's just funny, man. I think it's human nature to like latch on to the one negative thing that was said and then blow it out of proportion. I did it too, right? It's like it's gonna be a much more linear Horizon game, but we've heard just how fucking incredible it is, right? It's like an experience you just can't miss out on, and even calling it an experience sends the wrong message. This is a full, I can't say full-fledged Horizon game because it's not 40, 50, 60 hours. It's not open world, right? But it does seem like a much more full-fledged game than we're used to getting in VR, especially with these production values.
it's a bad word, right? This is a tech demo. It's not just a tech demo. It's a game, but this is a tech demo, and that's a bad word. But you have to consider that if it's a tech demo for the most amazing tech we've ever had in our hands, then it's going to be an amazing experience. And there's that word again, experience, right?
Right.
It's bad words. These have been negative things in VR up until this point, but the tech's getting better, and I think that with that, the experiences are going to get much better as well.
I hope so. I really hope so. Moving down a little bit, we got Saints and Sinners Chapter 2, Retribution, which seems... I have no idea what's happening with this game, Wes. It seems like we're going to be... there's a date for the Quest version? Is that the only one that has an official release date right now?
Officially, yes.
Yeah. And so, everyone's been saying, well, what are we going to do with the PSVR 1 version? Are we going to play the PSVR 1 version, or are we going to wait for the PSVR 2 version? And at this point, I mean, it's, we're getting close to mid-November. Is Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution even going to come out for PSVR 1 this year? And I say without a release date, it's looking less and less likely.
Yeah, it's not looking good, man. Honestly, it's not. And you're starting to get into the kind of weird in-between space now where if it doesn't come out this year,
Right.
Why should they push to launch it in January? Like, why not just do a concurrent release in February? Because nobody's going to play it in January anyway, right? Like, if this thing launches on PSVR 1 in January, you're not going to play it, are you?
I mean, I will, because it'll probably be the only thing I have to do while I wait for PSVR 2. There's not going to be other games coming out in January, Wes.
Play Dropship Commander, bro. Come on.
That's true. I hope it has the staying power to last a couple more months. But yeah, no, if the only... It's interesting, man, because I know that there's people out there who are not upgrading to PSVR 2. That's a cold, hard fact. There's not a lot of people out there, right? Most of the people who aren't buying PlayStation VR 2 day one aren't even playing their PSVR 1 anymore, right? They've either stopped playing VR, they're on the Quest, or on the PC, something else. The core base of PSVR 1 users, and I'm sorry to be the one to have to say this sometimes, is very, very small. That's why Sony's being like, don't even fucking bother making your game for PSVR 1. Just put it on PSVR 2. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. And so the only people who are going to buy this, if it comes out next year on PSVR 1, are the people who are still the hardcore PSVR 1 fan base who are not upgrading to PSVR 2. And I can't, dude, I can't imagine that number is bigger than triple digits. This is it's a huge move for Skydance, like a loyalty thing, right? Be like, thank you for your support on PlayStation VR 1. We're doing this for the very few people who are left.
Let me ask you this, Brian. I'm curious what you think about this. So we can agree that it's not looking good for this hitting PSVR 1 this year, which means it's likely. And to answer the question you haven't asked yet, yes, I do think this is going to be a launch title. But I'm not so sure. If I really think about it, I'm not so sure that this launches on PSVR 1 before it launches on PSVR 2, because obviously there's a lot more development. There's a lot more work for a lot less reward. I think they will bring this to PSVR 1 because they've committed to it and they typically stand by their word. But if they're going to let this slide in the next year, then I'm not so sure that we even see it by February, to be honest.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, and I see where you're coming from there, right? You want once next year rolls around, your priority has to be the PSVR 2 launch. Being there at a headset's launch or a console launch is so important to developers and publishers that, yeah, if focusing on the PSVR 1 version means that won't happen, well, then that will definitely take a lower priority immediately. Very curious, though. Very curious. Yeah, I totally expect this to be a PSVR 2 launch title. And I'm kind of happy about that. I mean, this is going to sound really strange because the last thing I want to do is make it sound like I'm happy that a PSVR 1 version isn't coming sooner. But I'm a little bit nervous that if I jump into this on PSVR 1, it won't feel like a substantial enough upgrade. It won't actually feel like a sequel. There's only so much you can do with the PSVR 1 horsepower or the PlayStation 4 Pro horsepower. And so I kind of want it to feel like a full-fledged sequel just because I'm playing on a next gen headset, just because I have a PlayStation, I'm playing on a PlayStation 5 and it can push the 4K visuals, because it can push, new controllers, man. I'm going to play Saints and Sinners with analog sticks. It's fucking crazy to me, right? And so I want it to feel like a next gen experience, and that's kind of why, selfishly, because I will have to play this on PSVR 1, Wes, if it comes out earlier.
You're going to spoil it, bro.
Yeah.
Listen, you're going to be able to feel the chainsaw cut through the bone, dude. Come on. It's going to be awesome.
Would that use the headset haptics too? Would you actually feel that in your head? I mean, if you're holding a chainsaw, that kind of rattles through your whole body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I expect games like that, like Rush of Blood or Rush of Blood 2, Switchback. When you're going down those wooden tracks, man, and that thing's rattling, you're going to feel it all through your hands and your head and everything, man. It's going to be a next gen experience, and it's that's one of the biggest things to be excited about. I feel like is the advance in the tactile feel of the equipment.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, man, Rush of Blood 2, aka the Dark Pictures Switchback. I really do feel like we're going to be calling this thing Rush of Blood 2 for the rest of our lives.
That's what it is.
That's
what it is. They're just trying to rebrand. They already rebranded their flat games. They're going to rebrand their VR games now.
Yeah. This has been confirmed to be a launch title, which is really nice, right? Because I think some people see this as a negative. They're like, oh my God, it's Rush of Blood all over again. It's the PSVR 1 launch all over again. Look what we're getting. We're getting a Resident Evil game. We're getting, a Rush of Blood type game. And, the sky is falling. This just can't happen. We're PSVR 1 situation all over again. We're never going to get any. Dude, if we're going to be in the PSVR 1 situation all over again, I'm so happy that we're getting Rush of Blood 2 along with it, because this is one of the best reasons to own a PSVR 1. And so this, I think one of the most requested games over the last 6 years has been a Rush of Blood sequel. And now we're finally getting it. And so I don't want to hear any complaints.
Completely unexpected too, man. We thought that Supermassive was done making games for Sony, and subsequently, again, I'm not convinced that this is going to be an exclusive. It might be a timed exclusive, but Sony isn't even the publisher this time for this game. Bandai Namco is publishing the game this time.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
interesting.
So I think this will probably end up on Steam at some point. But the best version is going to be on PlayStation. So I'm glad that it's going to be a PS5 launch title or PSVR 2 launch title.
Very interesting. Very interesting. God, yeah, I know. We definitely did not expect to see Supermassive ever again. I'm just wondering what happened to that Killzone game.
Yeah, me too, man. Whatever happened to that?
Yeah, I mean, and really, that's the kind of thing that I'm expecting that Sony's holding back, right? If there are things like a Killzone VR game in development, this is like kind of the 1-2 punch they want to deliver when they do a state of play or they do a PSVR 2 event, showcase, whatever you want to call it, right? Because they can kind of go over everything and be like, hey, we told you that, blah blah blah, we told you this, and like here's the launch lineup, and then they just deliver. Once we have everything in the same place, and we can all kind of look at it and go, okay, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming, this is getting me excited. I'm ready for a PlayStation VR 2. And then they go fucking Killzone VR, and they just knock you the fuck out. You're like, holy shit, this is what I've been wanting all of these years. And the fact that Sony's looking at games like Horizon, these big IPs, and saying, yes, this is something we want to do in VR. I feel like VR is the absolute best possible way to revive some of these somewhat dormant IPs. And I think the last Killzone we got was Shadowfall on PS4 at launch 7 years ago. Right? This is a great way to find out if there's still some love for Killzone out there. And I don't even care if it's a new title. Just give me Killzone 2 and 3 or whatever. Make those into VR games.
Yeah. It's interesting because, as much maligned as the library has been up until this point, they're giving us a lot here to be hopeful for. So with the Horizon, they're giving us the hope of all of these first-party IPs coming into VR. And with Switchback, they're giving us, the VR faithful, hope that our favorite game might get a sequel. Our favorite Gen 1 VR game that nobody plays anymore might get another. Somebody, Great Tantrum, was it maybe in the chat? Somebody just said that they'd love to see a sequel to Thumper. That was Tatum. Tatum said they'd like to see a sequel to Thumper. And at first I thought, they probably won't do that. But that's the same thing I said about Rush of Blood a month ago. So maybe they will. We already know we're going to get another Res game, most likely. They've dropped heavy hints at that. So we could see a lot of games that we didn't exactly expect to have sequels of now. It's kind of the sky's of the limit because, while we didn't get 3 or 4 big first-party IPs, we've got a wide variety of different stuff here that they've already revealed. Again, about 70 different titles altogether if you count the ones that developers have confirmed. So, yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful here.
I want to stay on this topic, or I want to get back to this topic in just a second. I'm actually taking a note because I'll lose my train of thought real quick, but we are kind of far behind on tips, so I want to get caught up on those, and then we can get back to this conversation. DJ Dirty Yellow, the $10 tip, says, how worried are you that there will be no AIM 2, and do you think that Gran Turismo 7 VR support is being saved for a special event? Kind of covered some of this a little bit, right? We talked about de-aim at the beginning of the show. How worried am I that there won't be an AIM 2? Not terribly. Mostly because I don't know how much we're going to need it. I do think that there'll be something to kind of hold us over in the meantime, even if it's just some PVC piping.
It's going to be interesting to see if they do an official peripheral like that, because somebody will make one regardless. Like, there's going to be stocks, but you have to have support on the software side for them to be any good. Like, to pick up a generic stock and go into a game that doesn't have gun stock support kind of sucks. It's a bad experience. So it'll be interesting to see if Sony, just to kind of head off the pass and make sure that the experience is what their games are supposed to be, that they just go ahead and do it themselves. I hope so.
And the second half of his question is, do you think Gran Turismo 7 VR supports being saved for a special event? I think the easy answer is absolutely. Like, if there's one first-party title that I think is a hybrid game that we're going to get, that's going to get full support in PlayStation VR 2, absolutely Gran Turismo is at the top of that list, because they tried so hard to deliver Gran Turismo Sport in VR last gen, and they just couldn't make it happen, right? Because they had to support the OG PS4. Now here we are, like, PS5 is, firing on all cylinders. Really, we haven't maxed out the hardware yet, and this is their opportunity to say, hey, this amazing driving simulator that we put out there, well, now it's the most amazing driving simulator ever released on a VR headset.
They kind of botched the launch of GT7 on the flat version on PS5.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like maybe that has a little something to do with why we haven't heard anything about this yet, because they get this rare second chance to relaunch. And we've already heard the head of that studio and that company talk about how the biggest jump for their franchise is going to be the move into VR, next-gen VR equipment. So I think that they're probably focusing on relaunching as a VR title, a VR-centric title, and they probably want to make sure that they don't drop the ball a second time. And that's probably the reason why we haven't heard anything more about it yet. I think when the game's, close to what they feel like is ready, then we'll start hearing a little more about it.
I agree. I also think, again, that's that 1-2 punch where it's why isn't Sony talking more about hybrids? Why isn't Sony talking more about first-party IPs? Because look what they're doing right now, man. They're getting everything else kind of out of the way, right? The somewhat negative price tag, the kind of sketchy launch details with the pre-order details that, like, some people aren't getting the email and some people are. Sorry, Wes, to remind you of that. But also something I really want to talk about is all these Quest ports or PC VR ports, games that other people have been playing. You just double checking to see if you've gotten the email during the show? I think you should.
Yeah. Right? I need to know, Ryan. No, nothing yet. Damn it.
It's been the reaction to these Quest ports and PC VR ports of games that have been out on other systems for 6 to 12 months has been overwhelmingly negative, right? And I'm sure that it has to do with the titles or the way that these titles look as well, because it's things like Tentacular, it's things like Alchemy Labs' Cosmonious High, right? People are like, oh, fucking, more games that look like they belong on Quest or PSVR 1 or, where's... And if we got independent games or we got indie games that look like, if we got Phasmophobia, would anybody out there be like, what the fuck, man, Phasmophobia? We don't want fucking Phasmophobia. No, of course we do. Of course we do, right? And so I'm, so it kind of bums me out a little bit to see the reaction. It kind of bums me out that we keep getting these announcements of Quest and PC VR games, not because I don't want them, but because that's not what's going to sell PSVR2, right? We do want these over here, but it also makes me think Sony's getting these out there on blog posts and, and just kind of posting the launch trailers up on their YouTube channel, but they're not doing it as part of an event or part of a showcase or part of a state of play, for the most part anyway. And so that's what leads me to believe that they are saving things like Gran Turismo 7 for the big power-packed thing that's going to make you go, Jesus, I can't live without a PSVR 2. Because right now I think some people could. I think after the Sony event, that's not going to be what people are thinking anymore. They're going to be like, I fucking need this device.
Yeah, I think a lot of the disappointment with the lineup.
And we're back. So sorry to everybody who's watching this thing live. Abnormal amount of technical problems today. I do apologize. And I also apologize to Wes, who it seems to be happening right when he's deep in thought and expounding on these really great thoughts. So I apologize, Wes. Do you remember where we were talking about?
Well, you said it at the top of the show, Brian. We like to talk a lot. So I'm kind of always in the middle of some big spiel. But yes, I was about to say that I think that that most of us are excited to get these titles, even the ports, and play them on better hardware.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of this sentiment and criticism, both from inside the VR bubble and outside of it, comes from this universal expectation that we've had that Sony would have started by now trying to push VR out into the mainstream. We all assume that was what their goal was going to be with this generation, is to invest in selling people on VR. And we kind of expected more by now, and it isn't happening yet. And I think as is the case, and we've said this before on this channel, our expectations are our worst enemy. We always expect there to be more than what actually ends up happening, and we get disappointed largely because of our inability to have realistic expectations.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, I think, to most of us when you say, why would Sony even bother making a PSVR 2 if they weren't going to push it as hard as possible and utilize all of the relationships they have with third parties and utilize all the first-party IPs that they have, just in their stable. It's why. For us, we're like, why wouldn't you do that? And I think for them, it's also, why wouldn't we do that? But also, it doesn't have to be all at launch. I think Sony's thinking long term, much, much more than I ever will. I want everything, and I want it now, fucking right away, right? But I think we'll see a lot of the fruits of their labor over the course of the next 2 years, right? I think the first year is going to be great, but I think year 2 and year 3 are going to be phenomenal.
I think they still look at VR as a project too, like an ongoing learning process. They said that a lot of the reason why this one's so awesome is because of the lessons that they've learned from the original. And they see that VR and AR, XR long term is going to be something that's meaningful and significant. And while the future, this beautiful future of VR might not be coming soon, there's still steps that have to be taken to get there. And I don't think that they would bow out. They want to stay in the game, and they want to continue to advance. But they understand now what a lot of us understand. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So, yeah.
Okay. So although there's a bunch of other launch titles that we could go into detail about, or other titles that we are not sure will be there at launch or not, I think maybe, Wes, we've already got quite a long show going on, and we've still got some more tips to talk about. So I say you and I table this conversation, and we go, and then maybe next week, if depending on what the situation is news-wise, maybe we look at some of the lesser appreciated announced games, and we give them the attention that they deserve, because there's a lot to take in here.
And by next week, the pre-order window will have already happened, so it possibly could have some more announcements, some more clarity on these titles. I really wanted to deep dive on some of these again today, and here we did the same thing we always do, Brian. We just keep talking.
That's how it works, man. But that means we'll just never run out of shit to talk about, right?
That's right.
All right, so let's take care of a few of these tips then. We got DJ Dirty Yellow with the $5 tip, says, will there be a Farpoint 2? He also gave us another $5 tip but didn't say anything. So thank you for the $10 tip asking about Farpoint 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be. I'm sure of this because I think Larcenauts is a very good game. I think it's highly underestimated by me and everyone else for one reason, because it's not Farpoint 2. And they know that. They know why that game failed. And I think if they do another game before they do Farpoint 2, the same thing will happen, and they understand that.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously that all comes down to their relationship with Sony. And I think, I don't know numbers on how well Farpoint sold, but it doesn't have to be a Farpoint sequel. It could be another story in the Farpoint universe. It doesn't have to be Farpoint 2. If maybe they'll remaster Farpoint 1 and deliver that as part of a Plus collection, and then Farpoint 2 will make way more sense on PSVR 2. But I do agree that's the game that we want to see Impulse Gear make. And so far, man, I was disappointed in the announcement of Larcenauts for the exact same reason that you just said, because it wasn't Farpoint 2.
Oh, and the teasers that they gave made it even worse, because it seemed like they were doing a story-driven sci-fi game. Yeah. So even if it was like a spiritual sequel and not actually the continuation of the Farpoint story, I would have accepted that, right? If it had the same kind of gameplay and environments, I would have been okay with it. But to have a versus multiplayer game trying to cash in on flat gaming success, it just didn't go over well with me, and it didn't go over well with a lot of other people too.
It's very true. We've also got Genetic Blasphemy, the Chrome Colossus with a $2 tip, says tip train, toot toot. Hopefully I hit the right pitch for that. We got Nihilist Ryan, the Game Feline, with a $5 tip, says PSVR 2 is going to bring VR back from the brink like the NES brought home consoles back 35 years ago. Pizza bet. I don't know if you're going to find anyone here that'll bet against you, Nihilist Ryan, because I think you're absolutely right. And we're also just to elaborate on that a little bit, I guess, right? Very, very thankful to all the steps that Meta have taken up till this point, right? Because I really do think if it was just PSVR 1 and then no one else stepped in and kind of tried to make VR cool or make VR really accessible to the mainstream and making a standalone headset for as cheap as they did, I don't think the popularity for VR would be there right now. Maybe not even enough for Sony to be releasing PSVR 2.
The conversation, even back then when PSVR was flourishing, the conversation outside of the PSVR community before Quest was VR is dead. It's going nowhere. Yeah. In terms of Sony scale, the numbers that PSVR 1 did was a drop in the bucket. People expected VR, even though it was very expensive at first, they expected it because it was so awesome that it would take off anyway, and people would just pay whatever they had to get it. But they underestimated the idea that you can't really tell people how awesome VR is. They have to experience it for themselves. And that was why Quest was so important. It was a proof of concept. It was a proof after VR pretty much had already failed that if people try it out, they'll buy it. And I think that we owe Meta a huge debt because of that, because we get another couple of generations now just because of their success.
Wes, hypothetical. I forget what Miles calls these thought experiments. No, I forget who listens. But hypothetical. What if Meta never entered the VR game? What would that have done for PSVR 1? Do you think PSVR 1 would have flourished and thrived and grown and kind of had like more support because all the people interested in VR weren't so scattered and more people would have come into the PlayStation ecosystem in order to play VR? Or do you think that those numbers were just those numbers and that's how that was going to go?
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting question because we kind of, when we think about Meta and their contribution to VR, we think about Quest and what they've done over the last few years. And we fail to recognize that Facebook bought Oculus before Rift launched. And all of those, big budget PC exclusives that came out, that was Meta too.
Right.
But before Quest, there was this big disconnect between, the VR community was a fractured thing. There was very much a PC VR community and a PlayStation VR community, and they they existed pretty much outside of one another. And we had the PC guys with the endless bankroll saying, I would never play something that don't have thumbsticks and has to rely on console, dated console graphics, because valid criticisms from their perspective. But then on the other hand, we have Sony over here, PSVR players saying, all right, so maybe our equipment isn't as technically advanced as yours, but look at our catalog. Yeah. We've got 10 games for every one that you have. Good games. So there was this disconnect, and those two communities pretty much couldn't agree on anything until Quest came around, and now they both agree that they all don't want that. So it would be interesting. I don't know where we'd be without Meta, but they certainly have shifted the landscape, like on a very, very fundamental level in many, many ways.
Yeah. I'm not sitting here thinking that I didn't even have a good answer until I was listening to you talk about it. But I do think PSVR 1 would have had a somewhat longer life because PSVR for a while was kind of the place to bring your games. If like you had mild success on PC VR, Steam, whatever, it seemed like developers were very, very interested. Everyone I ever talked to was always like, oh, the goal is to get it on the PSVR. But by the time most of them got around to trying to do that, it was like too little too late. Like the ecosystem had already sort of, fluttered out.
I think that Sony really dropped the ball when they didn't give us a new Move controller. All they would have had to do is put a stick where that button is, and we would have gotten 2 or 3 more years of games, I feel like, out of it. But
maybe.
I think of Sony's to blame for a lot of that.
I definitely think Sony's to blame for a lot of it, and of course, the people compare, which I don't think is fair. People compare the PlayStation VR 1 to the Vita, saying that Sony was good out the gate, and then they dropped the ball completely, stopped supporting it, and just relied on indies and third parties, which is, on the surface true. But we also know that there's plenty of those indies and third party games that would have come to PSVR 1 if it wasn't for Sony's backing. Sony was constantly out there trying to get these games to come to PSVR 1, paying for the ports, paying for exclusivity even sometimes. So I think if Sony had delivered more first party IPs, that sure, we wouldn't be sitting here thinking that. People wouldn't be able to say, oh, it's just like the Vita, completely different story. And I also
they didn't want to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just think that, and you can always interrupt me because I'm never saying anything important. I promise you. A Resistance game or a Killzone game or an Uncharted game would have possibly moved the needle to the point where people stick around just long enough to see what else is happening, right? Whereas I think it was too easy at a certain point, 2 or 3 years in, for everyone to jump ship and say, nothing's happening over here. Let's go check out this Quest thing.
Right, and they didn't want to invest like that in Gen 1. No. Like, it's kind of a miracle that we got anything. When you anything at all, when you think back to how PSVR came into being, and you go, if any of you out there haven't seen like the early prototypes of the PSVR 1, go check it out. These things literally have Move controllers strapped to the headset to track it. It's a miracle that we got anything, but it was an experiment, very much so, and they didn't want to invest the money. Obviously, if they weren't going to invest in controllers, they're not going to invest in doing multi-million-dollar games with big IPs either. I think that fact is a reason why a lot of us are so nervous and antsy about only having one first-party title right now. Like, are they going to do that again? We don't think so, but we didn't think so before either, and you saw how that turned out. Yep. So, interesting.
Very interesting. Excuse me. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is absolutely the cause of everyone's nervousness. They don't want this to be the PSVR 1 generation all over again. For all the great things that happened during the PSVR 1 generation, I think a lot of that generation can be boiled down to one word: waiting. Like, waiting for an announcement, waiting for another AAA game, waiting for anything of interest to come along, just waiting through dry spells of like just nothing. There were entire months where we didn't even get a crappy game to play, and then we get a crappy game and it'd be like, Jesus, this is all we got? It was so frustrating. I just felt like 6 years. 6 years of my life was spent waiting to do something. Like, oh, what am I going to review next? What am I going to get to play next? And a lot of that waiting didn't result in very much. And I don't want that to be the case this gen. And I really, really, really hope Sony proves to everybody soon that that's not the case. And it doesn't. I don't think it's going to take very much. How much will it take, Wes? If they say Gran Turismo 7 at launch or within the first 3 months, the full game, every single screen in VR, is that enough? Or do they also need to say, and The Last of Us, and God of War, and Days Gone, and whatever?
I think we need one we don't expect. Now, let's be clear. There are people out there that don't want to be convinced, and they'll say things like, "Man, I really wanted Sony to do it this time." But the truth is that they don't want to be convinced. That they shit all over every little thing that they can pick out, and they nitpick because they don't want to be convinced. They don't want to have to go drop the money on this and put all the effort forth into getting one. I think we need one big surprise. Like we need one that we're not expecting. Like The Last of Us would be one, or like a lot of people put a lot of stock in Half-Life Alyx. I'm not so sure that even that for a lot of like traditional gamers is going to be something. Half-Life Alyx has been out for a couple of years now. People didn't just all go buy PSVR because of it.
Right.
I think Grand Theft Auto Online in VR would be.
Yes.
I've always called that the singularity. When that happens, you can play that and go live in that world. Everyone will buy a fucking headset.
Agreed.
So we need something like that. But again, how soon do we get something like that? People are just now starting to develop in Unreal 5. You know what I mean? It's going to take a little while for the real next gen stuff to get here. We just wish they'd be a little bit more transparent about what they're working on.
Agreed. Yeah, Grand Theft Auto is 100%, just not even just 5, like you said, online. That is the persistent world like that. And if you include that with Grand Theft Auto 5, the single player campaign, then you're batting 1,000 right there. As the thing I think that would sell VR headsets to the mainstream, to the masses, people who weren't prior and had any interest in VR whatsoever. And I agree with you on Half-Life Alyx. I think that Half-Life Alyx is going to be something that people who are already going to buy a PSVR2 will be super fucking excited about, right? Because they know Half-Life Alyx will run on this thing. So just knowing that we're going to be able to have those caliber games and then also get that game, great. Fucking great. But I don't think that's the system seller. It does have to be something that's more ubiquitous, something like Grand Theft Auto.
You'll win over a lot of PC guys like that, just to be able to play a newer version of their favorite game. And trust me, all of them, that's their favorite game. Yeah. There's zero variance. But you'll convince a lot of that community, most of it probably, to pick one up. But here's the thing: how big is that community really? It's not as big as the PSVR community was. They get 2 million users that they celebrate. So. So what are we really talking about here?
Yeah. Shapeshifter, the amorphous game cat with the €2 says, Megaton Rainfall 2, anyone?
I still never played that game. Like a lot of people said it was good.
Crap.
It looked like a cool concept. I like the...
I got to change 20 questions now.
I like the people screaming as you destroy things, or as maybe the was it aliens that destroyed things, or were you the one destroying the buildings?
Well, you could accidentally destroy buildings while trying to take down the aliens who are also destroying buildings, yes.
I remember laughing while watching people play, probably watching you play it, and people were just screaming as the buildings collapsed, and I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was actually pretty fucking funny. And as ambitious as that game was, it was janky. It was made by one person, and so kind of cool. I would love to see if that person could, if he's still making games, and if he's going to make a sequel. We got one more tip here, I believe. I hope I didn't miss any. Please, if I missed any, please scream at me in the comments so we don't move on without getting everybody. Looper, the underground game cat with the €2 says, "Here they lie too, please."
We're not getting that ever. We're
not.
But we've talked about this a few times before. I do think we're going to get a spiritual successor, probably something that has nothing to do with even the same themes as the first one dealt with. But we're going to get that same kind of artistic creativity from a lot of the same people that made that game.
Yeah.
So I'm more excited for that than anything probably.
Agreed. So many questions, Wes. Who knows what's going to happen next gen? Lots of questions, very few answers. Speaking of lots of questions, Wes, are you ready to play a game of PSVR 20 questions?
I am as ready as always, which is not ready at all,
Yeah,
but let's do it.
All right, well, I'm going to put 6 minutes up on the clock on the counter. Please, everybody, help Wes out. This shit's always difficult. It's way more difficult than you think it is, I promise you. So here we go. You get 20 yes or no questions. Figure out what PlayStation VR game I'm thinking of. On your mark, get Des. Go.
Is this a good game, Brian?
Good, yeah, it's a good game. Look at that, you already got a yes.
It's a good game. Has this game been confirmed to have a PSVR2 version?
Ooh, good question. This game has not been confirmed to have a PSVR2 version.
The way you said that makes me think that you expect it, though.
No freebies.
I know. Well, does this game use thumbsticks?
No.
No.
God,
Okay.
I think I have the PlayStation Store up here. 99% sure it does not.
Okay, yeah, I get you. So probably a move title then. Does it have full locomotion?
It does. Yes.
So it's full locomotion move title.
Listen,
I need to know his genre.
I gotta just say this. The store page says DualShock 4 vibration, but then it also says move controller required. So welcome to the PlayStation Store. I don't know anyone who's ever played this. Shit, maybe it does. Move game. Just it's primarily a move game. It might have DualShock 4 support.
Okay. All right. So people play this game with moves, and you wouldn't think that people play it with DualShock.
Exactly.
But it does have full locomotion.
It does.
We need to nail down a genre here. Is it a horror game?
No. This would not be a horror game. That's 5.
Is it a shooter?
No, you would not call this a shooter.
Puzzle game?
Yes. It is a puzzle game.
All right, so we have a puzzle game with full locomotion, not horror, so it's not going to be like a Don't Knock Twice or any of that sort of thing. Interesting. Is it story driven?
Yes.
Story driven puzzle game. Is it exclusive to PlayStation VR?
It is not exclusive to PlayStation VR.
Okay, I have some ideas here then. Story driven puzzle game. Moves only. I think I don't know who the developer is of that game, so I can't ask you that. Does the title have like a subtitle? Is it like title something the subtitle?
No, I think that's the first time that's ever been asked. 10 questions, Wes. That's a no.
So it's not Zing. I thought it was Zing for a minute. It's not Zing, obviously.
Yeah. What are they called? White Lotus.
Ah, there you go. Yeah,
Is that them?
Zing the Land Beyond.
Yeah.
I think Robinson used DualShock, didn't it? So probably can't be that. Story-driven puzzlers, guys. We already did D Magneta, I think. So I don't think you're picking that one again. Or was it gravitational?
Here's the best part of that question, Wes. My memory's shit. Your memory's shit. If we picked a game a couple weeks ago, I would not count it out. But
well, I blame those two titles more than our memories for being very forgettable.
Well, I'm going to save you the trouble. It's not either of those, so keep moving.
Okay, good.
All
right. Story-driven puzzle game. All right. I guess I probably should be checking out the chat at this point. Full locomotion with move controllers.
I haven't been keeping a close eye here, but I don't think I've seen anybody say it yet. But I
really wouldn't consider Static to be a story-driven game, even though there is some backstory to it. It's not driven.
Full locomotion, Wes. Full locomotion.
Oh yeah, of course, in full locomotion. Is there smooth turning?
Yes, there is.
So it's not Shadow Point, guys, and Darazine is forced node based teleport, so it's not that. Uh, Good thought, old Darth. Is this game? Did it come out this year?
This game did come out this year.
Ah ha ha!
Narrows it down quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, because we've only really got two good story-driven puzzlers, and one of them doesn't. I don't think Moss Book 2 uses move controllers. Maybe it does. I doubt it. There's no thumbsticks. It would if they gave us a new move controller. Okay, so shit. Let me think of what the. Yeah, everyone's saying it's Wanderer. Brian, is it Wanderer?
Wes, made by M Theory and Maze Theory. M Theory and Maze Theory. M Theory. It's not M Theory and Maze Theory. It's
No, it's
M
not. It's
Maze something. Maze Theory is who made M Theory and Odd Boy. That's who it is. Yes.
Oh boy, there you go.
it is Wanderer. Came out earlier this year, as you've already said.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Again, January 27th, 2022, and those two companies have actually merged into one company now, and they are called Mighty Eyes, which really throws everybody for a loop. Do you remember playing this with the DualShock? Like, do you? Because I kind of sort of remember reaching out with one hand and pulling ropes just to try it, but I might just be imagining that.
No, I don't remember playing this with DualShock at all. And honestly, I only tried it for a little while on PlayStation VR. I played, I think, mostly on Steam with this one, but I did play completely through this game, and I think it's a tremendous. I'm losing my words now. This game to persist, it's a front runner for Game of the Year now as a January release. I think that says a lot about this game.
Agreed. The interesting thing about this game is that the developers are constantly kind of teasing, hey, we've got something in store. Hey, pay attention, blah, 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 whatever. Your first question, I believe, was, has this been announced for PSVR2 yet? And in my head, I was like, I don't think they have, but I feel like they're always right on the cusp of announcing that, right? Which this would be the perfect title for PSVR2, because I think PSVR was kind of dead by the time this game came out, right? That's why I'm so happy to see Zenith, The Last City, coming to PSVR2, because as far as PSVR1 goes, like, I think the entire GameCat community were the only people who played it on PSVR1, right? And so I can only imagine what the sales were. Same with Wanderer. And so this would, yes, finally give this game the attention it deserves. This was amazing production values and deserves all the attention it can possibly get.
Technical marvel, this game on PSVR 1. I can tell you, if they upgrade it to make it more like the PC version, it's not going to be a big upgrade. It looks great on PlayStation VR.
Yeah, really, the only thing I would want from a PSVR 2 version is just to make sure those last couple bugs that they haven't gotten around to fixing yet are totally ironed out, because, I mean, when we first played at launch, there were bugs everywhere, and you never knew if it was like the game that was glitching out, or if you just weren't solving the puzzle. And that's the worst thing about puzzle games, is not knowing if it's you or the game. And then they were gradually getting more and more and more of those fixed, and they're almost to the point of where this game's almost fucking perfect. So I really, really hope they iron out everything and have this nice, perfect PSVR 2 launch where everything is just absolutely beautiful. I think the one thing people wanted on PSVR, I don't know what it looked like on Steam, but when you were playing the drums in like the Jimi Hendrix level, right, and like the people out in the audience were just kind of like weird blurs. It just looked really strange. And
yeah, they were weird on Steam too.
Okay. I had a feeling that might be the case. But
yeah, there was a lot of weirdness with that game. You're right. Some of the glitches in it, because the puzzles weren't all obvious. Actually, some of them required some outside the box thinking. So you would get stuck in it. But then when you're stuck, when it's not your fault, you really don't know that, because, again, you might just be stuck because the puzzle's outside of your line of thought at the moment. But I love this game. I love how non-linear it is. I've seen other people play it and like seen like a progression of their videos on YouTube, And I don't think anybody's taken it that I've seen in the order that I did yet. Like it seems like everybody has their own path through that game, which is amazing. It's amazing to have that kind of variability. And again, what is a story-driven puzzle game? It's a hardcore puzzle game. It's not. It doesn't deviate from what it is. It's a puzzle game.
Yeah, dude. When they gave me a chalkboard to figure out a Morse code puzzle, I was like, I am so all in right here. A chalkboard in VR is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Wes, thank you so much for hanging out with me during this yet another epic episode of PSVR Gamescast Live. Sell me on Virtual Strangers, man. Let all the cats out there who have not yet subscribed to your channel know what you guys are up to over there. In case they missed the beginning of the show, what are you up to? Why should we head over there and subscribe?
Platform agnostic VR enthusiasm, friends. We cover all VR.
Oh, sorry.
But let me finish. We only cover good games. We don't play games because they're popular or because we actually try not to play what everyone else is playing on YouTube at the time. I say that as we're about to talk about Among Us VR, ironically. But no, we play what we want to play, and if we're talking about a game, it's more than likely a good one, and it's a good. Our foundation is PSVR, but we grew to experience it all, and we try to deliver that kind of perspective, no matter which VR community that you're coming from. We don't play favorites. We love all VR, and that's kind of what we do over on our side of things. But if I had to sell people on my channel, I would say we kind of take a unique angle. We try to do things a little differently than your run-of-the-mill VR channel. And if you want something different, if you're tired of all the mouth-gaping thumbnails and clickbait, then
red arrows.
You found the right place to come.
Yep.
Yeah, red arrows. There you go. Yep. Then you found the right channel, friends. Come over and say hi.
Right. And Wes is over there. That's the biggest selling point you miss, man. And I know you're not like a big self-promoter, but dude, again, I love having you on this show. I look forward to my Wednesday episodes because it's for me, it's, I think AJ and I are very high energy and we're like, we rattle through news stories and, we try to get out of there in an hour. I don't want to do that with you. I never want to do that with you because I feel like, you don't get the full Wes Dillon experience if you try to push him in and then push him out in an hour. I love hanging out. I love talking VR with you. I love your perspective. And there's so much more of that over on Virtual Strangers. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you click the link in the description below and join Wes and his friends over there on his channel. His friends are okay. Like I give him like a 6 out of 10.
All right.
Right. They know Brian Paul. They know Miles Dyer. They know whatever AJ's last name is. They're not those.
Jay.
Right.
His first name's A. His last name's Jay.
Right. Roots is cool. Eric's all right. Maybe Roots is like a 7. Eric's more like a 6. No, I'm kidding. That sounds if I was being serious, that would be really fucking mean. But no, I love your channel and I love everything you guys do. So make sure you. Oh no, Eric's in the chat. Okay, time to go, guys. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Thank you everybody for hanging out and watching the show today. Thank you everybody who contributes to this channel. For everybody from J Meow, Sci-Fi Game Cat Henry, all the mods out there who make my life amazingly easier. Obviously, Wes hanging out with me every single Wednesday for as long as it takes. All the cats in the chat who helped out during 20 questions, who contributed during the chat, who tipped. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, and of course all the cats that sat back, watched the show, didn't say a goddamn word. We know you're out there. We love you just as much. Let's get out of here, Wes.
Bye.
Ian Stambridge in the chat says AJ's last name is Beanie. I love that the beanie has just become like an integral part of his personality. Like he's just not allowed to remove it anymore. Has anyone ever seen what's under the beanie?
I wonder what his head looks like, man. Do you think maybe like he had like a motorcycle accident years ago or something like that? Like I wear a hat a lot, but I mean, you guys have seen my head. I do have one.
Yeah, we have also seen it without a hat though. So that is the thing. Yeah, I have no idea, man. It's a mystery, and will continue to be a mystery probably till the end of time.
He might have one of those. What do you call it when you put the little ponytail on top? Maybe he's got something like that going on under there.
Like a bun?
Yeah, man bun. Maybe he has a man bun over there. By the way, Mark Smith says his last name's Godcannon, which makes sense.
Oh, AJ. Was it?
Godcannon.
Sorry, I thought middle name was God, and then the last name was Cannon.
Oh, sounds like a trial lawyer. Like, call AJ Godcannon, attorney at law, if you've been exposed to mesothelioma through asbestos or some shit like that.
Guess this YouTube thing doesn't work out. 777. Hell yeah. You go.
Forever. $3. Super chat says
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Kill Us All. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We love you all. See you Friday.